Hello and welcome to another video, and at this one we're going to be looking at Spelljammer and the vehicles introduction for the 5th edition rule set. So let's get straight into it. If we go to our modules here, I've loaded all the modules that we've got that have been updated for the new vehicles statistics. So Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus, Ghost of Saltmarsh, and of course Spelljammer itself. So let's start with Spelljammer and let's have a quick overview of what this is all about. The Boo's Astral Menagerie, as its name suggests, is basically a monster manual. We've got the creatures all listed by name here. We've obviously got all the imagery, the details, and in the reference manual we've also got a full actions tab for each of the different monsters that we've got, and of course the monsters themselves are in the NPC list, along with all the usual stuff, tokens, image links, etc., etc. So just all kind of standard stuff for the monster manual. We then have the Astral Adventurer's Guide. I've split this into two, a DM guide and a player's guide. So the players will need to open this module here. This is shared by default, obviously, and the players will need this to create characters. We've got the reference manual in here as well. It gives us details of the various character options. There's a couple of backgrounds. There are some races. And all of this, of course, is available from the menu down here as well. We then have a little bit about how you go about adventuring astrally, how the Spelljammer works, etc., and a bit of information on ship-to-ship combat, and a little bit of information on magic, which includes a couple of new spells for the players to play with. The Dungeon Master's Guide for the Astral Adventures. This is where we find the vehicles, the vehicle statistics. So we've got a bit about the Rock of Bral. But the main thing here that we'll be interested in is the actual ships themselves, the spelljamming ships. So each section of the reference manual sorts out one of the ships. We've got a summary of what's in the ship, the weaponry. We've got the DM map is linked here. You just click on to open that up, and that shows you each level of the ship, if they have more than one level. And of course we've got a link here to the vehicle statistics themselves. So let's have a quick look at this. This is a completely new template for the vehicles, similar to NPCs, etc. You can see we've got vehicles over here on the right hand side. And all the statistics for the vehicle is given here. So we've got the type, the size, etc., the cost, the crew, etc., etc. And we've got armor class, hit points, and we've also got the damage threshold is included here as well. So we don't need a trait called damage threshold in order for this to work. We've got the flying speed, and we've got the various components that the ships have, and we can click on any of these to see what this is all about. And we can see this is a ballista. It tells us what the crew is, its armor class, hit points, etc., and the various actions that you can take. It tells you here that it takes a turn to load, a turn to aim, and a turn to fire. And then we've got the usual sort of attacks and damage, etc. So that's and we've obviously got that for each of the ships, and some of the ships will have special weaponry, like this one, for example, has got a piercing ram, and we've got all the rules for that. And again, we've got everything here that you need. And if we have a look at the combat tracker, if we chuck a couple of, let's say we've got some bombards, let's chuck a couple of bombards onto the combat tracker, and everything just works in the same way as you would normally do. You've got each of your weapons, so we would just target as usual, do damage as usual, etc. And you can see that the damage is coming in here, but you can also target the individual components of the ship now as well. So if we wanted to specifically target the giant cannon here, then we can do so just simply by dropping the dice onto the giant cannon section. We can see down here now that we have hit the giant cannon, so we can now do a bit of damage to it. And again, we just drop the dice onto the giant cannon section, and we've got the giant cannon is now wounded, showing on the combat tracker here. Obviously, this is the DEM view. Players aren't going to see all of that information. The combat tracker has been changed in the latest update to accommodate all of this. Let's just get rid of that for the moment, and we'll have a quick look at the adventure. Now, I don't really want to spoil the adventure, so I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. What I will show you is just the one thing here. And that's the Starfield. So obviously there's a lot of ship-to-ship combat. So I've provided this map here, the Starfield map, which comes out of the book, and it's quite difficult really to get this absolutely right. Because if we have a look at the grid here, I made it a hex grid, and I made the grid 100, and I've also made the distance multiplier 17.5. So if we go back to our combat tracker here and shove a couple of ships onto the combat tracker and then get them onto the map. So the idea is that if we have two combatants which are starting off at either end of the map, then the distance between them is going to be basically at extreme range. We can close this. With extreme range, which will in this case be about 1,000 feet. Most weapons don't have a range of more than 1,000 feet. A couple of them do, but most of them are well within that range. So I couldn't really make this a 5-foot grid. I mean, all the ships have got different movement speeds. Some of them got 35, some have got 50, some are less than 35, a couple are 40. So 5 foot obviously would be the ideal, but if I made this grid 5 feet, then the map would have to be colossal, or the grid would have to be teeny tiny. So I've compromised, made it about 1,000 feet from either end approximately, and I've made the movement 17.5, so that the bombard here, which is a move of 35, so if it's going to be moving 35, then it can do so. If a ship moves 50, then I would suggest that you move it like 3 hexes, which is near enough 50. And if it goes less than 35, then just move it 1 or 2 hexes. I don't think we're going to be too worried about, a 5-foot difference here or there. But you can play around with this if you want. You can change the grid size. You can change the distance multiplier. So just go to the grid and play about with these settings till you get something that you are happy with. Okay, that's Spelljammer. So the other two modules, we've got Descent into Avernus, and again we've got all the vehicles here. And all the rules for the Descent into Avernus and the Ghosts of Saltmarsh are catered for within the rule set, so that, for example, the Descent into Avernus vehicles have got this mishap threshold thing. So if we chuck a couple of Devil's Ride onto the combat tracker, and again, oh, that's incorrect. If we go to, this should have some kind of, oh, it doesn't have any kind of weaponry at all in it. Very good. I'm sure that's a mistake which I'll need to try and fix, or maybe that is it. Maybe it doesn't have a weapon. I'll need to check on that. Let's put a grinder on and a scavenger. So the scavenger does have weapons, as does the grinder, I'm fairly sure. Yep. And again, we can target individual components here if you want to, but there's no rules for that in the um, Descent into Avernus. But the components do have their individual stats if you wanted to give them such. So in this case, we're just really basically going to be doing a strike on the thing itself. And if we do damage, and hopefully we do enough damage, we didn't. Let's do a bit more damage to it. And it's continually resisting our efforts. But if we do enough damage, then we will get a message down in chat to say that the damage has exceeded the mishap threshold, and the mishap table is attached to any of the vehicles, and we can make a roll there on that table to see what's happened since the hit exceeded that threshold. So that's the descent into Avernus. Let's just get rid of all of this. And the other one we've got is the Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And again, same thing here. This time it's mainly sailing ships. And it's exactly the same thing here. And again, each of these have got armor classes and hit points, so you can target the individual components of these sailing ships, and various things will happen if you fail. So, for example, we could target the sails here with our mangonel, and if we then do a bit of damage to the sails, it shows us that we've done some damage. And if we click on the link here, it shows us that if the sails are damaged, for every 25 points of damage taken, then we reduce the ship speed by 10 feet. So everything is there on the combat tracker or through the links, so that you can handle the combat in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Now, of course, you are not restricted in any way to just these ships. You can create your own. If we go to vehicles and then add item, then we have a template, just like it would be for an NPC or an item or anything else, and we can fill all this information in. We can just give it vulnerabilities, immunities, etc. We can give it statistics, and we can also add in components. And if we go to items here, and if we go to vehicle components in this list, then if we wanted to give this ship an acid bile sprayer, we just drag that in and it'll automatically add that in for us. If we want to give it a blunt ram, if we want to give it a chomper, then we just drag and drop these items into the vehicle, and this will all work. We've also got traits, of course, which you can add. These are they're not items, so these are just traits, so these can be added in the same way as you would with an NPC. And if you wanted to give them a mishap threshold, damage thresholds, all of that information can be typed in, so you can create your own ships. And the one other thing that there is as well is that there are vehicle component upgrades. There's a few of these in Descent into Avernus, and this just changes things with with the ship. And again, we can just sort of drag these in. They won't necessarily do anything. It tells us here that the armor class of the vehicle goes up to 22 plus its dex modifier. So you would then just go in and change the armor class to whatever that was, and these other various things. And of course, you can create items yourself. You can simply create another vehicle component. So if we go into here, and when we type in vehicle component, then this opens up the other boxes that you can fill in for all the various things about this particular item. And obviously, if it's a weapon, then you'd go in here and add in some actions to the weapon, just describing what the melee attack, etc., would be, and what or the ranged attack, and what damage would be, and if you wanted to have a load, aim, or fire time, etc., etc. So basically, you can add in your own item components. You can add in your own item upgrades, and you can create your own ships. And of course, if you create your own items, you can then drag those into the ships as well, and they'll appear in the component section of the vehicle. So I think that pretty much covers everything that you need to know, and hopefully that gives you enough of an overview to get cracking with vehicle combat in the 5th edition rule set. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers for now.